Great, fantastic, great. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call the June 21st, 2023 board meeting to order and remind everyone to please mute your audio when not speaking, as well as state your name prior to making a comment or motion and a second for an action item. I'll ask each commissioner to please respond with a here when I call out their name. Commissioner Doan,
Here.
Commissioner Duggan,
Here.
Commissioner Fisher,
Here.
thank you, and Commissioner Lysick.
Here.
Great. We'll begin this evening by reports from our Chief Executive Officer and his management staff. Tom?
Well, thank you. Before I get into this, most of this I'm going to be turning over tonight because I landed at noon today and got back home by 2 o'clock after getting everything. And I'm just a little bit tired and still trying to get my feet underneath me here after a day of travel to get here. I'm going to be turning this over to Pete and the team tonight to go through this. I do want to let you know that at an upcoming work session, I will provide an update of just what I learned from working and speaking with other utility executives. That was a really interesting experience. And then also what I got to learn about Open, which was frankly a remarkable experience to meet with Open at their headquarters to see what they've done there and how they're structured. It's a really impressive structure that they have. So I'll do this first part, and then I'll be turning this over to Pete Boone. July Talk and Water, TVWD's next virtual forum will be held noon, July 12th, and focus on drinking water quality. Pre-registration is not required for the event, and you can find the link at our website. So with that, I'm going to pass this over to Pete Boone, our COO. Pete.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Good evening, commissioners. So at our last board meeting, you asked Tom and us on staff to bring some options forward to you for you to consider to name something in honor of the late Commissioner Dick Schmidt. So we've looked at that. We have come up with some options for you to think about here in terms of facilities, and then also some potential names. And I'll just run through them real quickly and talk about why we think these make sense. So our first recommendation would be to rename the facility that's currently under construction at 209th and Farmington. The working name for that facility right now is the Farmington Fluoride Facility. It's a supply entry point for the Willamette, and it's going to bring water into the district down at the southwest corner. Which happens to be fairly close to the Schmidt family home. They're just a little bit east of here on Farmington Road. So this facility is going to come online later this year, actually ahead of the Willamette. We'll be able to use it prior to 2026 in a abbreviated fashion, but it is currently under construction. Very near to that, the second option would be to rename the existing Grabhorn Reservoir and Aquifer Storage and Recovery Facility. So the reservoir there was rebuilt in 2018 while Commissioner Schmidt was on the board. He was also on the board when the well was developed into an ASR facility. And so he's been through both of those in his tenure on the board. Moving over to Metzger, the Taylor's Ferry Reservoirs and Pump Station. So the design for this project is completed. It'll begin construction later this year. So that would be an option. And then the last one on the list is our 189th Avenue Pump Station. So this is a critical facility. All of these are critical, but 189th in particular serves all of the Cooper Mountain area, pushes water up the hill. So all of these facilities are wholly owned by TVWD. as opposed to maybe a partnership facility in one of the Willamette assets. And so, we have full naming rights and control over these. And we think that, like I said, all of them are critical. But our recommendation is the 209th and Farmington facility. It is a key part of the Willamette. And Commissioner Schmidt was instrumental in bringing the Willamette forward as a project and making that successful. And so that would be our recommendation. We went so far as to offer a few potential names, but certainly we're looking for input from the board on that. And I actually, so our team put together some renderings to help kind of visualize some of this in your head. And of course, these aren't in any kind of finished form, but just to give you a sense of what this might look like. So this is a view of the 209th and Farmington facility that's from about a week ago. So you can see where it is at the intersection there. A lot of right-of-way frontage, a lot of visibility, although there will be some landscaping that blocks a little bit of that view. So one option would be some signage on the wall of that. And of course we could come up with any version of what this could look like. Here's one look, and we could think about other options in terms of raised lettering, and I've got an example graphic that would show that, and we could think about lighting and different things as well. So of course we're not building a fire station, but if you think in terms of a raised lettering option on that kind of a background, here's what something might look like there. And then we could also consider a standalone monument sign at either the entrance or maybe up at the corner of 209th and Farmington at the stoplight there when folks might have a little better visibility into the site. So just a few quick things that we were able to pull together graphically to kind of help your minds see what options might exist. But really we'd like to hear from the board if there are any preferred directions for us to develop some of these options further, and we could bring something back at a later date.
Thank you, Pete. I'm hoping, especially to hear from Commissioners Doan and Duggan, as your relationships were far longer term than the other three members of us. If you feel any of these adequately address our goals to memorialize Commissioner Schmidt's support in the project. So Commissioner Doan, Commissioner Duggan, if you have any thoughts, love to hear them.
This is Jim Doan. I think the 209th facility is very fitting. I can almost hear Dick talking in the background about how this is going to work. And I would go with that. I would prefer it to be the Dick Schmidt Water Facility and not Memorial. Memorial sounds like somebody died 200 years ago. And so anyway, I go with that. But we may want to tweak the language a little bit. But I think it's a great tribute to him.
This is Commissioner Duggan. I agree with Commissioner Doan's assessment of the situation. I don't think memorial really needs to be put in there, and I think I don't know if it needs to have both first name and last name. I'd like to get maybe a little input, and I don't know how we would gather that from Donna on whether she would like to have it the Dick Schmidt water facility or the Dick Schmidt fluoride facility, or Dick Schmidt water fluoride facility or fluoridated water facility. I don't know. I I just think it would be respectful to let her know ahead of time that we are thinking about this action, and if she had a preference on whether it was just Schmidt or Dick Schmidt, and whether it had the word fluoride in there, because that's the prime purpose of what it is. Um, and again, I don't want it to be too uh, obtrusive or too in your face, but I kind of like the wall sign option rather than a big monument sign on the east end of the site, or maybe a monument sign on the corner. I think that the wall sign would be nice. But I think we should solicit a little bit of input from Donna before we would take this final step. Um, and I appreciate staff for thinking this through and getting it to this point. I really appreciate the options and the thoughtfulness to all this. So thank you.
Commissioner Lysick, Commissioner Fisher, I know that you didn't have the honor of meeting Commissioner Schmidt. I can tell you he always had mints in the drawer of his dais, which was fantastic after a cookie and a salad. He was a very kind man and he was a very considerate man. Before we kind of give our leadership team any direction, do you guys have any thoughts or concerns?
This is Commissioner Lysick. None. My only perspective was keeping memorial out of the name, and I would say as we draft sort of a broader policy, I think it's a good thing to keep the language as broad as possible, because we're probably going to be adding some facility names of people who are still around. So keeping it simple and broad, I think, is great. But no, it was just a pleasure to hear more about your Commissioner Duggan and Commissioner Doan, your perspective and what Dick Schmidt would sort of be thinking about it. Is nice to hear his memory in that way. So no comments or changes.
Commissioner Fisher?
The same on my end. I only had the pleasure, I think, of meeting Dick 2 or 3 times, and each one of those was a positive experience. So, barring any suggestions from the family, I don't have anything else that hasn't already been said.
Alrighty. Pete, Tom, does that give you guys enough to go on? Would like to see if we could circle back with Donna. And other than that, it sounds like we have a place and a possible name.
Yeah, appreciate the input, and we'll reach out to Donna and we'll come up with some options for you guys to consider later on as we near completion.
Great.
Thank you.
Before we close this, if Kylie is available, I know she's putting together a policy. I don't want to steal your words here, but if you got something to add real quick.
Well, yes, I have a draft policy ready for review, and I believe the board does review its policies generally in the fall, so that might be a good time to take a look at that. Everything that the board's discussed this evening would align with what's in that policy right now. And I'm happy to send that around, and I can check in with Tom about that. But yeah, I think you're all on track.
Right. Thank you. All right. Well, excellent. That's a great move forward for us, and I think a very honorable thing to do for someone who's put in 20 plus years, 20 of some of the hardest years of TVWD's existence. All right. Thank you, Pete. You got more, I'm sure. I'm sure you're not done, Pete.
I think I'm going to get to Sam if he's online. I think he was going to run us through this one. So
Aye.
Sam, take it away.
Thanks, Pete. Hello, commissioners. So we're going to jump over back to the topic of our board meetings. And so since the last work session, staff has been hard at work at listening to the feedback from our commissioners and putting together a little bit more of a simplified proposal for the board. So we're going to lay out two options. Option one is the staff recommended option, which is returning to in-person meetings. What we feel is that this gives the best experience for members of the public and our commissioners. Members of the public, of course, will still be able to attend remotely in order to comply with state law. And commissioners who can't attend in-person meetings are excused as long as they give us some advance notice. So our board policies are a little casual in terms of excused absences. As long as you give advance notice, you're excused. And if you don't give advance notice, it's okay if it's a medical emergency or any type of serious situation. So that's our simplified option one. We really encourage you to come back. We'd love to see you. And we feel that gives the best experience. And then we have option two. Paul, if you want to advance the slide a little bit for me. You're there. Okay, well, option two is we continue our virtual meetings as we're doing right now. So just kind of simplified it into two options. I'd love to hear from the board on what they think about returning to in-person meetings. Is anybody opposed to doing that?
And I believe Kylie has reached out to each of you individually to talk about this. If you want to add some more context, this is a good time.
So I'd be happy to do that. I haven't had any conversations individually with the commissioners about this, but I know that Kylie as well as Pete has reached out. It sounds like the majority of the board is in favor of returning to in-person meetings. There's a couple little things that need to be worked out, maybe with some transportation and things like that, but we're happy to facilitate anything that commissioners need in order to get everybody back in person. And I think that was really the main conversations that were had with the commissioners, unless I'm missing anything, Pete or Kylie.
Commissioner Doan, you had something?
No, I was, my needs are met concerning transportation. I'm just wondering if there's really a need, but we might as well give it a try. And if nobody shows up, then we can go do whatever we want to do.
Good point.
Well, let me ask a couple questions. Are we going to go back to televised meetings?
So the plan is not to.
Community TV.
So the plan as of right now is to not continue doing that. We're going to be broadcasting the meetings. We're going to be recording the meetings via Zoom, and then we're going to be providing them to the public via that method, unless the board prefers that we do any other methods, which we'd be happy to take care of.
Okay, so basically it'll be, for lack of a better word, a tape of the Zoom meeting. But there won't be
That's
interaction.
correct. That's correct. It will be a recording of something like what you'll see here now, which will be the presentation, the speaker, and a view of the board sitting in the boardroom, which is very similar to what the local cable access channel provides currently. They don't currently broadcast our meetings live on local access. They do it after the fact, and they post the meetings, the Zoom meetings, on their website, just like we do right now. So that's what it looks like moving forward.
I'm okay with it.
Any other thoughts from any of the other commissioners?
Just a question from Paul, we will not be moving to Zoom. As of right now, we're going to continue with Teams until we feel the need to move to a different software platform.
Thank you. Commissioner Duggan.
Commissioner, I have a question. Will the recording still be made available on YouTube after the meeting, as has been done the last couple years?
Absolutely. Yeah. So right now we provide them on YouTube on our website. So our website will link to the YouTube recording. And then if anybody contacts me and wants to have a recording of the meeting, I'm always happy to give it to them promptly.
I was also hoping that there might be a hybrid option. In the past, and this is going back many years, when we had a quorum problem or something else, a board member would attend by phone and would phone in, and the experience for everyone with that phone in presence really wasn't that great. And I think now with MS Teams and the ability that exists for a board member to be remote if needed, whereas the preference is to have an in-person meeting. But if there was a problem or some other constraint that a board member could attend remotely, that option still be given. But if for the people at the meeting, I've noticed that, like during the budget meeting and a couple others, we had people with laptops where they were attending both the MS Teams version with their laptop and then also being visible in the room. Would the expectation be that board members bring a device so that they could also have that dual attendance with the close-up of them, or would it be where that it would just be the boardroom as we see in the photo?
Thank you for those questions. Those are great questions. Two questions, it sounds like. The first one would be, do we still have the option to do a hybrid meeting? And yes, we do. That's really the key there is going to be if a commissioner is going to be absent from a meeting, if you could just give us as much advance notice as possible so we know that we're not going to run into any type of quorum issue. And so if we had, I would anticipate if we had one commissioner who couldn't make it to the meeting, we would likely excuse that commissioner. If there were two, then we would start looking at our hybrid option so we could conduct business. The second question regarding individual camera views, we prefer to not have everybody have a laptop in front of them while they're at the meeting. What we're going to be able to do is have a camera on the board, and then you should be able to see everybody on the board speaking during the meeting. So it'll act sort of like you see now with individual windows. It just won't be quite as close up. We're going to start by having our IT department, our IT director is going to be there kind of controlling the camera view a little bit, but it's going to be a lot more simplified and not having to actively zoom in on each person because we're all going to be in the same room and members of the public remotely are just going to be looking at this view of the commissioners sitting at the dais.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. I was also a little concerned about watching some other public meetings where there were a plethora of devices and then having audio problems and severe feedback when you have a bunch of people with individual devices active in the room. So thank you for that answer.
You're welcome. So is there any more questions or feedback?
Sam, this is Todd
Yeah.
Sanders. Just to be clear, so we're going to, as a board, recommend probably option one to you. This also means we will start in-person board meetings on the July board meeting agenda, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, perfect. With that, then, I guess, do I have to do a roll call vote here? No?
Yeah, let's.
All right.
Yeah, I think a head nod would be
What the
fine for
heck?
this
A
topic.
head nod. Okay.
Yeah.
All those who prefer option 1, give them a head nod. And all those who prefer option 2, give them a head nod. All right. All the head nods have gone towards option number 1. The head nod passes.
Excellent. It's official.
It's official.
Okay. Thank you,
We
Commissioner
appreciate that.
Sanders.
Of course. There you go. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, and I think you've got me up next, and I do not believe I'll be asking for any formal motions nor head nods in my brief department update about our HR team. Okay. So I'd like to just start with an overview of our department structure. I think it's been a minute since HR has been in front of the board in this capacity. So we are a small but mighty team. I'm in the HR director role. We have 2 HR analysts, Debbie Carper, who our board members know very well, our former district recorder, and Shayna O'Doran, who you probably got to meet at one of our budget committee meetings. She was filling in for me while I was out of town. We also have our district recorder, Sam, and on our risk management side, Mike Jacobs and Kevin Sutherland in our emergency program coordinator position. That is our team. I would like to give just a little bit of an overview of what HR does. Some folks are really familiar with this, some are not. It just kind of depends on your work experience. So here's just a list in no particular order of the things we all work on every day here in the HR team. Recruitment and staffing is one of our biggest pieces. So we support our hiring managers in creating recruitment plans, drafting job announcements, determining where to advertise positions. We support them through the interview process, help determine interview questions and evaluation steps. We review resumes. We, give our thoughts and our guidance on that all the time. We also help create job offer letters that comply with our Oregon Equal Pay Act and any other applicable laws. So that's a big piece of what we do is fill in our vacant positions, and we've been filling them. I believe over the last year we had about 35 recruitments. It was a lot, and we cranked those out. Another big piece of HR is our employee benefits program. We are proud to offer medical, dental, vision insurance to all of our employees. We also have our retirement plan options through the public employee retirement system, as well as deferred compensation programs such as 401k and 457B. There's also kind of non-monetary items that may not be really an employee benefit, but I think they kind of fit in that category. Things like our scheduling options for shifts, remote work, those types of things. So all that sort of falls under employee benefits, and we get to help with that. We also work quite a bit with compensation, and you'll hear an update on our class comp project on the next slide. But we manage our classification structure. We also work to maintain competitive compensation, which is why we're doing a class comp project right now. Employee relations is another big area for human resources. You might often see employee and labor relations, and I left labor off of this part because we don't have a labor union here. So we focus on maintaining positive relationships between employer and employee. We work on things like regular policy updates and on some of the less fun things like disciplinary actions, workplace investigations, and those sorts of things. So employee relations is definitely a big piece of what we do in HR. We also need to comply with federal, state, and local labor employment law compliance. So there's a number of laws that apply to having a business and having employees, things like the Americans with Disabilities Act, Equal Employment Opportunity Law, Family Medical Leave, Oregon Family Leave, Oregon Sick Time, Oregon Equal Pay Act, Paid Leave Oregon, the list goes on. There are a lot of laws, and we stay up to date on changes with those, and then ensure that TVWD maintains in good standing with the law and that we're in compliance. Records management is a really critical part of our department, not only because we have Sam on our team, but in HR, there are a number of records that we manage for our employees, anything from their initial job application to their paperwork to come on board with the organization, their benefit selection, all those types of things. So we have a lot of records that we manage and maintain. And we're very lucky to have Sam on our team because he is an expert. And Debbie is also an expert. So I feel like we've got our records management quite covered. Fun fact, we are nearly paperless in HR. Our personnel files are all being managed electronically, which was a really big win over the last year. Helps us stay efficient and helps me take the filing cabinets from my office and get rid of them. So that's a big win for us. Risk management is also a huge part of human resources. Mike Jacobs is our risk management coordinator for a few more months. He'll be retiring quite soon. But we look at our property and liability insurance there, workers' compensation, OSHA compliance, safety programs, all those types of things. So we work with Mike really closely on that. And we will work to find an excellent new risk management coordinator to take his place after he retires later this year. And then emergency preparedness is Kevin Sutherland's area of expertise. That's where we look at our resilience strategy for emergencies, disasters, loss of facilities, physical and personal security, as well as a great deal of training. And Kevin's done a wonderful job scheduling and researching the types of trainings that our employees would benefit from. Just today, we had a workplace violence training, which is a bit of a heavy topic, but it's important that we know how to respond in those types of situations and how to prevent them. So we get a lot of training out of our emergency preparedness team. Moving on, I want to talk a little bit about some of our district initiatives. It's not listed on this slide, but our DISC integration was a district initiative that has been completed. The DISC program is it's a training and kind of assessment program for employees to understand themselves, their communication styles better, so that they can work with each other through conflicts and basically just be a better team. We run that training every year and work to integrate that within our department management. We lean into that, especially if we've got a conflict that we're working through, and look at some of the tools that we've invested in to help us navigate that. Another district initiative that we're working on, and you're quite familiar with it, I think, is our classification and compensation project. I've got our project goals up here. I don't want to get into great detail over these. The board has seen these in the past. We are making great progress on our project, and ideally we'll finish this up in August or September of this year. So we've got kind of the home stretch to get through. And on this slide, you'll see some actions that have been completed along with remaining tasks that we have ahead of us. So we've now analyzed each of our district jobs with employee and supervisor feedback and a lot of HR oversight. We've also drafted our compensation philosophy, and that was presented to the board in March at the March work session. We've also selected our comparator agencies, and that list was approved by the board in April of this year. And then we went along and selected our benchmark jobs and have begun collecting our compensation data. We are well underway in the data collection and hope that next week we'll see a summary and the full amount of data about all of the collection efforts that our consultant has done with our comparator agencies. So we are on track to see that next week. We'll need to determine what changes, if any, we need to have to our classification structure. And we use some of the benchmark compensation data to help figure that out. It's a little bit of art and a little bit of science. We got a lot of good information from our employees through those job analysis questionnaires that they helped with. And then we're going to take a look at compensation in the market and use all of that information to evaluate our own classification structure, determine if the number of pay grades and levels that we have is appropriate, and hear any recommended changes that our consultant might have. We'll also review all of our applicable district policies regarding compensation. That could be everything from recruitment and selection to promotions and transfers, all of those things in between. Anything that touches compensation will be looked at through this project. And finally, we will have our final recommendations and report, and we'll bring that back to the board late summer or early fall of this year. And that's when you'll see that compensation philosophy once more. And we'll have just a couple little tweaks to that because we're incorporating our new mission, vision, and values into that compensation philosophy. So you'll see that again. It'll be just a little bit different, but much more aligned with our mission, vision, and values work. We also have another district initiative in our department, and it is our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion project. We have selected iSuccess Consulting, Inc. To work with us on this project, and they'll begin that work this summer, and we almost have our contract finalized, hoping to get that in front of Tom tomorrow or Friday if we can. I've got a tentative project plan here, but we're going to flesh this out a little bit more once we get that contract signed and have really mapped out our steps in the project. But in general, we'll kick it off with a meeting, and then we will work to develop a shared understanding of DEI, of terms that are used with this topic. And we'll be focusing on that at the leadership team level, and we'll also be engaging the board there as well. One of the things we were really excited about with our consultant on this project is that they focused on making sure that your leadership team is all on the same page about this so that there's kind of a united front, and then we'll be able to lead more effectively through this project. So we'll really start with our leadership team. We're going to evaluate all of the current DEI work that the Water District has been doing. We've been doing some things, and honestly, none of them have been super coordinated. So we're going to try to get some structure around that through the strategic plan, the DEI strategic plan. But we're going to take a look at everything that we've been doing. We're also going to do that environmental scan to see what are best practices in the DEI field, in local government, and in water utilities. So we'll do a lot of evaluation on what's been going on and what others are doing that's working. We'll be coming to the board for your guidance on a DEI policy statement, and that will really help us with the next bullet of creating that strategic plan. We want to get that high-level policy guidance from our board so that we can create a plan that really meets those objectives that you set out. We'll also be developing metrics so that we can assess our DEI efforts. It's great to have a strategic plan and a lot of things that we need to do. It's not so great if we can't measure how we're doing on them. So we will be sure to have some metrics and measurement tools built into that as well. And then we'll be bringing that back to the board with our final report and presentation. And that will happen before June 30th of next year. Hopefully in the springtime. That's when I'm kind of thinking we'll be ready to go. And with that, that is my department update. So if anyone on the board has a question, I'm happy to answer that. And if there are topics you'd like to hear more about at a later date, please let me know or let Tom know, and I'm happy to bring back more information.
Commissioner Doan.
Commissioner Doan?
Yes, I just want to make sure that the apprenticeship program works well so that we don't close the door for people coming in as meter readers without giving them people an alternative way of becoming employees. And so as long as you keep that in mind, I'm happy.
Definitely. Pretty
I think
easy.
that's it.
All right. Well, you know my email. If you have questions or anything, feel free to reach out. And it's always lovely to see you all. And we'll see you in person next month.
Great. Thank you, Kylie. Have a nice rest of your June. Okay. I believe, is that it for us, Pete? Or we got more?
I have just one thing to update the board on. I got late breaking news yesterday, actually, while I was traveling, and it's not the news I was hoping to get from our lobbyist CFM, but much to their surprise and to ours, the state legislature did not award us any funding for the WWSP. It is a surprise. It's even, I will go as far as shocking. Yeah, President Sanders and myself heard directly from legislators that, very encouraging information that we would be receiving funding, and to go from that to nothing was quite a shock to all of us. So we are trying to find out what happened. What happened in the deals going on behind the closed doors. How that happened. Um, it really is. It's just very disappointing that even literally there was a hallway conversation that we had with the speaker, and I was telling him that we would be willing to certainly adjust our request if it made it more likely to pass, that we were flexible. And he actually told me, do not negotiate. You need to stick with what you're asking for. And which was a pretty encouraging thing to hear from the speaker. And then to go from that to hearing that we got nothing was quite shocking. So more to come on that, trying to figure out what happened. The game's not over, and I don't know, I probably shouldn't call it a game, but it's the reality of the situation. It's kind of how the system works. We're going to continue to work on this, and we'll see what other opportunities here that we can do to access some of this funding. By the way, it was not just a disappointment to us. Even Intel had made inquiries and was quite surprised to hear that we didn't get anything. So Intel was supportive of this, and they were quite shocked to learn the news as well. So I will let you know more as I learn it, but wanted to let you know that because it seems to fit well with the financial discussion we're having tonight.
Yep. Government. All right, let's keep going here before we wallow in our own sadness. Next item is our commissioner communications and reports of meetings attended, and we'll begin this evening with Commissioner Doan.
Okay, great. Tonight's meeting, the regular meeting, the work session on the 6th, budget meeting on the 31st, and an AMR risk discussion that I had with staff on May 24th. And that's all I could find in my calendar. But then the computer and I are not the best of friends anymore.
If you two broken up,
Oh, we're getting divorced.
I see. Wow, we've gone. That's
Yeah.
to the full extreme, Commissioner
Did you
Doan.
mean my sound broke up?
No, you and your computer.
Okay, no, that's okay. I'm going back to clay tablets and chisel.
Wonderful.
It's got to be hard to distribute them.
Can you convert them to a PDF?
If PDF means permanent disabled factors, sure.
Righto. All right. Thank you, Commissioner Doan. Commissioner Duggan.
On May 24th, I attended the Talking Water regarding spring irrigation preparation. And also on the 24th, I attended a staff meeting with updates about ongoing concerns. On the 31st, I attended the budget committee meeting. On June 1st, I attended the Willamette Water Supply board meeting and it was both meeting and an executive session. On the 6th, I attended our board work session where we received financial and a WWSP update. On the 7th, I attended the Regional Water Providers Consortium Board meeting, which is our regular June meeting. It occurs 3 times a year. At that meeting, we elected a new chair and new vice chair. The new chair is Kevin Williams from Oak Lodge Water District, and the new vice chair is Renee Brose from City of Sherwood. And I hope I pronounced her last name correctly for the vice chair. On the 12th, I attended the Washington County Public Affairs Forum, where Tim Elsey from Beaverton Public Works came and talked. He's the new director of Public Works that started at Beaverton in February. On the 13th, had the agenda planning meeting where Commissioner President Sanders and I received updates from staff, and then tonight's meeting.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Duggan. Commissioner Fisher.
Good evening, everyone. So on May 24th, I attended what they call a meetup with the mayor of Tigard. And it's usually 7 to 8 people who meet with the mayor of Tigard at a local Tigard establishment, and they give the mayor updates about what's going on in their part of the community. And I pretty much use it as a chance to information share with the mayor of Tigard and hear about stuff between our district and Tigard, since we overlap just a little bit. Then the next day after that, I attended the Westside Economic Alliance Mayor's Forum, where we heard from mayors from all across the metro region, basically from every city. I think, aside from the mayor of Portland not being there, most from the west side were there, including a little bit from going over to the east, like the new mayor of West Lynn. And we heard, I tried to keep my ear open for water issues, and only the mayor of Banks was one that really mentioned water and how they're going to be looking for another water source here coming soon in the next couple of years. I then attended the budget meeting, and then I attended on the 15th of this month a town hall with Washington County Commissioner Nafisa Fye to hear about issues going on in Aloha, to sort of start to learn about what's going on in Aloha, where our district office is located. And we heard mostly from constituents in Aloha about the Safe Rest Village shelter that's being proposed for the United Methodist Church parking lot. And then, of course, I'm attending tonight's meeting.
Excellent. Thank you, Commissioner Fisher. Commissioner Lysick.
On May 31st, the budget committee meeting. On June 6th, our work session. On June 13th, I had a brief meeting with Kylie to talk about the telework policy in more detail, and then our meeting this evening.
Righto. Thank you, Commissioner Lysick. And for myself, and I apologize to Sam, I haven't sent in my sheet yet. For some reason, the quarter ended. I know, I apologize. When the quarter ended at PCC, all the license servers seem to shut off. So all of my like I can read a Word document, but I can't actually edit a Word document right now. I can look at a PDF document, but I can't scroll through the PDF document. So I don't know what's going on, but I kind of almost don't care, because I don't have to work for 12 weeks. So the drive to fix it is kind of low. Anyway, All right. On May 22nd, Tom and I met with our folks at CFM. He gave you just a momentary update on that. On the 23rd, and I'll talk about this a minute, with topics to be raised, I had a couple phone conversations with board member with the West Slope Water District. On the 24th, I met with Tom, Clark, and Dave to talk about the thermal trading plan situation. And then number 4 on my list, on the 30th, I met with Tom and CFM again. Number 5 on the list, the May 31st Budget Committee. And then following that, June 2nd, some series of phone calls with leadership on planning. And then June 5th, Tom and CFM again. And then the June 6th work session. June 12th, another meeting with CFM. June 13th, our agenda planning meeting. June 14th, Kylie. June 15th, some other leadership meeting. June 20th, the Willamette River Water Coalition, where ex-mayor, now councilor of Sherwood, set a new record for the shortest meeting in the history of humankind, where he motioned and accepted everything in a series of 30-second movements. And if other than eating, it took longer to eat dinner than the meeting took. Commissioner Mays was just not in the mood to have a meeting yesterday. And so it was done, 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 done. Fortunately, he's no longer the president or the lead of the Willamette River Water Coalition anymore. So that should slow things down. And then number 14 for this month is tonight's meeting. All right. So now moving on to topics to be raised by commissioners. Do we have any topics from any of the commissioners to be raised at this time? Okay, not hearing any. I have one, maybe two. The first one, we do need to come to a consensus on and give Tom some direction here. And this is with regards to the West Slope Water District. In May, the West Slope Water District directed their general manager to begin discussions with Tualatin Valley Water District on the issue of possibly purchasing water from us, and also possibly talking about a merger of sources or of resources. And tonight we need to give the same direction to Tom, that we would like to present or request that Tom and his team begin discussions with West Slope Water District on providing a cost for water, and then B, to talk about a possible merger of our two organizations. So I'll open up to any questions that anybody may have on this regards. We've talked about it a little bit, but again, this was a board to board initiation. Their board president and I were the ones that had this discussion. Their board was the one that wanted to talk about a merger. It's not something that was brought forth by us in any way. It's not brought forth by Tom, so I don't want Tom to take a hit from their general manager saying that he somehow initiated this. This was initiated by West Slope Water District Board President. So with that being said, do we have any questions before we ask everyone to vote on if we would like Tom to move forward on these discussions? Okay, nice and silent. Tom, do you have anything to add before we offer?
No, other than this will be helpful for me to have this guidance of what's the board's direction to me, and what's the board's preference. And so then I can explain that and move forward with that.
Yeah. Well, then I would like to ask for a move and a second from our board members to direct our CEO to undergo to begin discussions with the West Slope Water District on providing them a cost for service of delivery of water, and to begin discussions on the potential of a merger between the West Slope Water District and the Tualatin Valley Water District. Do I have a motion in a second, please?
This is Jim Doan, so moved.
This is Commissioner Fisher. I second.
Great. Sam, can we just do a yay, nay?
Sure.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. Not hearing any then. Tom, please proceed forward as directed by your board. You're welcome. The second item, and this was brought up, Jim Duggan and I, when we had our morning meeting with Pete. We are going to be moving forward on our next board member positions. And I think we'll do this next month. Is that right? Was that the decision we made, Pete? Yeah, we're going to do this formally next month, but the only thing of true priority is that next year would be, if so chose, if you choose this, this would be my third and final year as board president. So we would have to, after next year, so this is 23 to 24. So summer of 2024, we will need a new board president. And in which case, perhaps the best role for that potential board president is to be vice president, coming in as Commissioner Duggan, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, did not want to be president again. He felt that that was perhaps a position that someone else could try. It'd be good. He's done it many times. And actually, if you look at the list of items that Commissioner Duggan's involved in, the last thing we need to throw on top of his plate is also the board president. He's got a handful and he's just a volunteer. So, um,
That was a good way of putting it, but I was board president for 2 years, and they were 2 years that aged me greatly. But you said it very well, President Saunders. I'd be willing to step down and not have my third term as vice president, or maybe it's my second term. I can't keep track. But I'd be willing to have one of my other commissioners take the role of vice president for this coming fiscal year, with the intent of them being board president coming fiscal year 25, 26. And that's what I have my eyes on. Is I want to be devoted to the Willamette Water Supply Project as the chair of that board, and continue to see that through to its completion and successful turn on in July of 2026.
and that's not very far away anymore, is it? It really isn't. So with that in mind, I'll just leave it up to you folks to think about. I will be stepping down in July of next year as board president, unless, of course, you guys don't want me to be board president next year, which I would be happy to step down. My wife would be happy if I stepped down as board president in July. But she's such a tolerant and loving woman that she's willing to accept one more year in this role. And there's, yeah, anyway, so things to think about. Next month, we were going to have this a serious discussion about who's going to be our next board president.
Just so there's no question, this is Jim Doan. I am not interested in being board president.
Okay.
With my Parkinson's, I don't think I can track issues well enough if we get into a contentious meeting to keep it under control.
I understand. Thank you, Commissioner Doan. I guess we'll just have to be really transparent here. That leaves two individuals remaining. those two guys on the screen there. And we will have to have a discussion next month about where we proceed from there. So that being said, we will move on from that and into our remainder of this evening's meeting. The number one most important thing this evening is our public hearing in considering adopting resolution 08-23, a resolution adopting the budget and making appropriations for the Tualatin Valley Water District for the 2023 through 2025 biennium. And that staff report will come from our good friend, and I'm sure a very tired man, our Chief Financial Officer. Can we knight this guy, Sir Paul Williams?
Well, thank you, President Sanders. Not tired at all, actually. Got a good night's sleep last night. I think it was
Excellent.
Tom. I think it was Tom that had all the tough travels. But good evening, President Sanders, commissioners. This is maybe what President Sanders was alluding to, kind of the culmination of the budget process. This is the last and final step. And so in tonight's presentation, first of all, I need to apologize in advance. We're going to be putting a lot of information in the public record here tonight that you've already heard. So to a large extent, this isn't new information. And if you weren't very interested in this, I would totally understand, because in many cases, this will be the third time that you've heard the information. Having said that, it is important that we do have a public hearing, that we do present this in a public forum, and that's what we're doing tonight. So I'll present some highlights of the budget process. I'll summarize the direction that Tom gave us as we were preparing our budgets, and then I'll go through the details. And this literally will be the tiresome part of this. I'll go through the details of the appropriations for each fund of the approved budget that we received from the budget committee on the 31st, which of course the 5 of you were part of that budget committee as well. And then some closing remarks and recommendations. So where are we in the process? Well, it all starts with the departments developing their requested budget. And the management goes through that process, and they work with the CEO and the budget officer, and that would be me, to prepare what is a proposed budget that then gets presented to the budget committee, which is the 5 members of the board and 5 appointed budget committee members. And we are extremely lucky to have the budget committee that we have. They take their jobs very seriously, and they contribute a lot to the success of the budget process and, in fact, to the district itself. So I'd like to take this as an opportunity to thank those members as well. They approved the budget committee in its entirety, 10 members, the 5 of you and the 5 citizen appointees. So we had a 10-0 vote with a recommendation for adoption. So we bring to you the approved budget, approved as proposed. And then tonight we're asking the Board of Commissioners to take the final step, which would be to pass a resolution that would adopt the budget and set the appropriations that will follow. So here's a quick update on the budget process. It all started with our the formal process, public process, started with our budget committee tour back on April 11th. That was an opportunity to get the budget committee members out to see the largest investment that the district is making right now in the Willamette Water Supply Program. And very fortunate to have the program staff out there explaining the project and giving that insight to our budget committee so it could do its job. And then we had 2 workshops. The first one on April the 18th, where we presented information from the Engineering Operations Department as well as the Water Supply Program Department, and got information on our CIP, large part of that, as well as information on the Willamette Water Supply Program itself. And then the second workshop on the 9th, that's where we pulled together the rest of the departments, presented that information to you. After the 9th, we then went into proposed budget preparation mode, prepared that proposed budget, delivered it to the budget committee, and then on the 31st of May, had the budget committee meeting where action was taken to approve the budget as proposed. And now we're here tonight with the adoption process. Tom gave us direction early on, and again, you've heard this before, that this budget continues really from where we were before. We're a district in transition as we move from being in the past a suburban water provider to really what's occupying us now, which is building and preparing for the commissioning startup and the integration of the Willamette Water Supply Program, and preparing for that next phase, which will be the regional operations. And in addition to that, through this process, we developed our mission, vision, value statements, which are our platform for the budget and the proposed budget, as well as everything we do here at the district. That culminated with the adoption of those statements by the board earlier this year. So that provides further guidance to us as we develop our budget and our priorities. The priorities of the management have remained the same. This is the same list that we had in the 21-23 biennium. They move forward. That's to focus on human investments, again, to get us prepared for that new role as the regional operator of the Willamette Water Supply System, intergovernmental relations, to prepare again for that role as well, to improve our business intelligence, and to find other efficiencies through modernizations, and then to complete our current initiatives. So we present that to the board in March. We presented to you a list of the district's strategic initiatives, and those were approved by the board. And so we built the budget around those priorities. In addition, and you heard Tom talk about this before, we're also pursuing financial assistance. We're getting financial assistance from the federal government, from the state, wherever we can find it. And we'll continue to pursue that financial assistance in the future to lower the burden on our customers. We know that this infrastructure investment we're making is a generational investment. It's something that will be around long after all of us have passed along. And so it's important that we get as much funding as possible from our federal and state partners. So now I'm going to shift down into some of the more specific requests that are in the budget. For the district, as you can see, the key thing here presented here is the capital investment that we're making, investment in infrastructure. Don't need to get into details. This was included in the budget document, and you've heard this before. But as you can see, these graphs present the total investment in the in-district CIP over through 2029. Big investment in the next 2 years. That big gray part that's in the middle, this area right here, if you can see my my slide, this area right here is investment in primarily the Metzger Pipeline East, which the Willamette Water Supply Program is constructing on behalf of the district, but that is going to be an asset owned by the district exclusively. It will not be part of the Willamette Water Supply System. So we've got that plan going forward. In addition to that, we have our joint ventures. The Willamette Water Supply Program is a joint venture. We are largely done with the Willamette Intake Facilities Commission. I think we have just a little bit over $10,000 of a valve to put in, some additional cost, maybe $11,000 in total. I call that dumb when you're talking about a multi-million-dollar investment. But the big investment that we have here is in the Willamette Water Supply System. And that big investment is happening over the next 2 years as we complete that major construction project. When we add it all together, you can see the district is in a significant investment cycle. We get through these next 2.5, 3 years, then we'll be in a different financial situation. So we're in the process of securing additional money through borrowing. We just closed our revenue bond, 2023 revenue bond series. As you know, we'll be going back to get additional money to build out this infrastructure in the future. But this really is driving the district's budget. When we talk about our appropriations, the budget is appropriated at a fund level. So just talk briefly about the funds that will actually be, that the approved budget has appropriations for. The general fund is where all of our operations really are, and it's where all of our staff are. So when, for example, Dave Kraska's team does its work on the Willamette Water Supply Program, they're actually paid out of the general fund, and then we charge the Willamette Water Supply Fund for their services. And that's how we cover their salary costs, their benefits, as well as the indirect costs to support those activities. The Capital Improvement Fund is where we build our projects. The Capital Reserve Fund is where we keep money available for those capital projects. That's where we essentially save money to build out this important infrastructure investment. The Debt Proceeds Fund is where the money comes in when we borrow. It's important that we segregate these funds to make sure that we keep our federal tax issues clear, and so we segregate the debt proceeds into a debt proceeds fund, and then we have our revenue bond debt service fund, which is how we pay it out. So those are the 5 funds that supports the district's water utility. But in addition to that, we have our partnership funds, and these are funds that the district manages and that we'll be asking you as the board, and we ask the budget committee to set the appropriations for, but these are in fact partnership funds. So the first on the list is the big one, which is the Water Supply System Fund. We all know what that is. That's the large infrastructure project we have, and soon to be the source of our potable water that we distribute to our customers. The Willamette Intake Facilities Fund, the intake facility down at the Willamette, we've talked about that. WRWC, Willamette River Water Coalition, is a small activity, but yet important because it manages the district's water rights in partnership with the city of Tigard, the city of Tualatin, and the city of Sherwood. And then our Customer Emergency Assistance Fund. Now, this is the fund that we manage our emergency assistance, not the new customer assistance program. This fund is in partnership with Clean Water Services and with the city of Beaverton. The reason that we have that partnership is that customers make donations on their water bill that aren't specifically for water customers. So when we get a donation in, we make it available for both water and wastewater and as well as stormwater. Now, when the district contributes money to the Customer Emergency Assistance Fund, that is used only for water. But when we get donations from customers, it's shared, so it's considered a partnership fund. Important to know that all the money in the Customer Emergency Assistance Fund stays there, and the interest earned on that money stays in that fund, so we can help customers there as well. So those are our 4 partnership funds, and we'll be asking appropriations on all 9 of these, the 5 utility funds and the 4 partnership funds. So we'll start with the general fund. And on the left-hand side of this table, you see what are the appropriations categories, commonly referred to that, different names, but these are the items under Oregon local budget law that we'll set appropriations for. Personnel services, those are all the cost of having employees, including the cost of benefits, et cetera. Material services are those expenses that we outsource, and services, including purchase water from Portland. It includes power, chemicals, tires for vehicles, diesel, the whole thing. Capital outlays are expenditures on those items that will be capital in nature. By capital, it means it's over $7,500 and has a life of greater than a year. Special payments are transfers through the district that we provide to other governments. In this case, it is the right-of-way fees that we pay to the cities of Tigard, City of Beaverton, and the City of Hillsborough. They assess a franchise fee, which is a percentage of water bills for customers living in those jurisdictions. We collect that money from those customers and we pass it through to the cities as a special payment. Interfund transfers, you heard a question come up in the budget committee meeting about that. It's kind of a confusing thing, but when we take money, for example, out of the general fund and we want to send it to the capital reserve fund or to the capital improvements fund, we do that through a transfer. And the appropriations there limits the amount that we can transfer. And then the last is a general operating contingency. The general operating contingency is money that the board can use during the budget period, which is the biennium. By resolution, you can actually use that money if the district has unexpected needs within any of the other appropriation categories. So that requires board action. Staff can't do that without a resolution of the board. So that's how our funds lay out for the general fund. As you can see, we have a large increase in our general fund this year. Part of that is driven by inflation. A large part of that is our capital improvements, as well as our interfund transfers. Moving on to the general fund, one of the requirements here is that we have a balanced budget. So presented here are the resources of 289 million and the requirements, 289 million to match. Now you might say, wait a minute, Paul, you just showed us a different number on the other table. The difference between the total appropriations and the numbers that you see here is the unappropriated fund balance. So we have that as a requirement because it's a use of money, but it is not an appropriated amount. But that is money that will be available in the next budget cycle, about $21 million of money that we are not asking to be appropriated, but we're going to carry that over into the future. The next fund is the Capital Improvements Fund. As you might imagine, all the improvements there are for capital outlay. And the big part of this, again, is for the investment in the Metzger Pipeline East, But also, our engineering operations department has a lot of other investments throughout the system that are necessary to move that Willamette water into our system. So they've got a lot of work that they're doing. All that is captured in the capital improvements fund. The other important part is the capital improvement fund includes the district's payments to the Willamette water supply system for its investment joint venture. So it gets categorized here as a capital outlay. And then when we close out our books, it will be recategorized as an investment in joint venture. But it is appropriated here in that manner. So that's our capital improvement fund, and it too is balanced. You'll see that there is a resource from other partners. That's our estimate on the amount of money that we will receive from Clean Water Services to help fund the AMI project, the Advanced Metering Infrastructure Project. So that's the assumption on the funding from Clean Water Services there. Moving on to the Capital Reserve Fund. This is all about transfers in and transfers out. So you can see there that we are looking at a significant increase in the approved budget, a $95 million increase in the transfers out of the Capital Reserve Fund to fund the investment in the Willamette water supply system. And to show that as a balanced budget, that's what we have. We have a beginning fund balance of 108 million is what we're estimating we'll start the biennium with. Interest income, we expect to manage that quite well, and we're happy that that's we're expecting to get over $5 million during the period of time. Contributions come largely from system development charges, and then the interfund transfers is the source of the money. The requirements will be sending the money back out for construction, and we will have an unappropriated balance at the end of this period that will be used to carry over into the 25-27 biennium. Now, this fund will depend quite a bit on how we manage the debt. So we are going to be doing additional bond issuance, depending on interest rates and some other factors. We may leave more money here to earn interest, spend down the bond proceeds. That'll be a decision that we will make, obviously within the budget guidelines that we have. The appropriations will stay within the budget, but we may make decisions that are a little different depending on interest rates and the availability to keep the cost as low as possible for our customers. The debt proceeds fund, the purpose of that fund is to receive money and then transfer it back out to the other funds to manage our construction projects. Here, again, we will see we're starting with a large beginning fund balance. The bond proceeds as well as WIFIA money that we will have in the fund. And then, of course, the uses will be largely transfers to other funds. And Customer Emergency Assistance Fund, when we provide assistance to customers, that's actually treated as a material and service line item. That is, we help customers pay their bill. We take money from this fund and we use it to offset their account receivable. That's actually seen a reduction. We increased that quite a bit during COVID times in preparation for the problems we're having with COVID. But now we're going to rely more on the customer assistance program and a little bit less on the customer emergency assistance program. However, the rate advisory committee made it very clear to us that they really recommended that we maintain the customer emergency assistance program. So we have that fund here as well. And you can see the resources and requirements that we have for the Customer Emergency Assistance Fund. A lot of it will be a carryover from prior years. And again, the money here, the interest earned here stays within this fund and is used to provide assistance to our customers. Okay, then we start talking about our water supply system fund. This is information that has, based on the actions of the Willamette Water Supply System Commission for the first year. We have a 2-year budget, so then we use the baseline to estimate what those expenditures will be in the second year. There is a good possibility, I believe, and Mr. Kraska could probably provide a better insight on this, that as we get closer and closer to the finish of this, our ability to predict this precisely is going to become a little bit less certain. So it wouldn't surprise me at all that we're going to come back to you with some adjustments either this biennium or the next biennium to level out these expenditures. There could be some projects that we're expecting to get done in the current biennium that maybe spill over to this coming biennium. If that's the case, then we may come and make some adjustments through a supplemental budget for this item. Just as we get closer and closer to the end of this program, that's the kind of agility that we will need. But as you can see here, a large amount of investment in infrastructure. This includes investments that we're making on behalf of our partners. So our partners will be paying us. It will come to the well and water supply system. We'll actually bill them out for these things. We do this on a weekly basis. Before we make a payment, we send a remittance advice to Hillsborough and Beaverton. They send us the money, and then we pay the contractors. We do that so that the district is not out basically cash flowing for our partners. But this is the 2-year commitment that we have. And again, we can expect to see some changes as we go forward. Here's our sources and uses, and of course, resources requirements. We have a balanced budget. Large amount of that, 267 million, is coming from our partners. But TBWD does have a large investment in there as well. The Willamette Intake Facilities Commission, I mentioned that we have a very small amount in the capital outlay, $11,000, which I think is one butterfly valve, and maybe some of the cost of putting that, some of the overhead costs that we'll put onto that valve as well. But now we're in the operating side of the Willamette Intake Facilities Commission. It's actually in commercial operations. It has been for some period of time. The intake, the water that comes in through the Willamette Intake Facility, is currently being sent to the Willamette River Water Treatment Plant used by Shorewood and by the city of Wilsonville. So under generally accepted accounting principles, that is now in commercial operations. So the material services cost that Wilsonville is paying to the contractors needs to pass through this fund, and we need the appropriations for this as well. So that's what you are seeing here in terms of the operating expenses. And of course, we do have a balanced budget on this one as well. All right, and then the Willamette River Water Coalition, same thing. We have an annual budget that they've approved, an annual budget work plan. We have to estimate what that will be for the second year. Of course, we do that every budget cycle. We've done that. And this is all a material and services budget. There are no capital outlays in the WRWC. This is an organization that manages the district's water rights. And we have a balanced budget as well. Our partners contributing about $170,000 of the expense. All that taken together gives us our total appropriations, which when you look at this number and you see $2.4 million of total uses of funds down at the bottom, 2.289 million of total appropriations. A couple things to keep in mind. A lot of this, because the way that the budget is, Oregon local budget law is sort of double counting. So we'll bring money in, it gets counted as when it transfers out as an appropriation. We then transfer it from Fund 11 to Fund 45, another appropriation. Then Fund 45 spends it, and Hillsborough pays for part of it. All these processes add up. And so the budget looks quite large, $2.4 billion, which over biennium, that is large. There's no doubt about it. But that's why we see these things kind of scale up over time. With that, I went through this kind of quickly. Important to note, I said there were 9 funds. One fund didn't get mentioned, and that's the debt service fund, because we have no debt service that is going to be due during this biennium. That will start in 2028. But with that, I would be happy to answer any questions, and I'll get into kind of a summary here, which again, you've heard this as well. We're building capacity to operate the WWSS and WIF. We're continuing to make that large investment in our infrastructure. That is our focus. We're pursuing financial assistance that Tom talked about earlier. And this budget will fund the initiatives based on our strategic plan that the board adopted back in March. It'll maintain current service levels with limited additions for the strategic initiative. So we are talking about adding to the service level with the AMI project as just an example. Will improve the services to our customers. It recognizes the impact that the biennium had on the pandemic had on our customers. by funding the bad debt expense and the newly proposed customer assistance program. So we have sufficient appropriations in here to cover our bad debt expense as well as that new customer assistance program. It funds our infrastructure investments and funds the district's transition to becoming the managing agency for the WWSS and the WIF. So it funds that transition process. So with that, I'll answer any questions that you might have. Apologize, went through this very quickly, but this is, like I said, the third time you heard most of this information. I just wanted to get it in the public record, but if there are any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. There are no questions, then management's recommendation is that the board adopt resolution 0823, which will adopt the 2023-25 biennial budget as approved, and will make appropriations for the 23-25 biennium. Thank you. Turn it back to you, President Sanders.
I think Commissioner Doan might have a question or comment. Commissioner Doan, we can't hear you right now.
Yes, sorry. I wanted to make a motion to accept the recommendation and adopt the budget.
Okay, great. Before we do that, I do believe, and Sam can correct me if I'm wrong, we're going to have to hold the public hearing first, and then we can accept a nomination, a motion. Is that
That
correct,
is
Sam?
correct.
Great.
That's
So
correct. You should have a script there to walk us
Yep.
through.
We will do just that, and then we'll have a motion. So at this point, we're going to open the public hearing in accordance with ORS Chapter 294. Anyone who wishes to offer testimony in support or opposition to the budget will be given 5 minutes, unless an extension is granted. Should 3 or more people testify at the same on the same topic, each person will be limited to 3 minutes. Following public testimony, I'll close the hearing and the board will consider action at this time. I'm going to begin by opening the public hearing on item 1A. Is there anyone who wishes to comment? Is there any testimony in support or any testimony in opposition? Okay, not hearing any, and let me just check the chat real quick and make sure I'm not missing something. Okay, the public hearing is now closed. And now, do I have a motion and a second to adopt resolution 08-23, a resolution adopting the budget and making appropriations for the Tualatin Valley Water District for the 2023 through 2025 biennium?
This is Jim Doan. I move that we adopt resolution 08-23.
Thank you, sir.
This is Commissioner Lysak. I second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Doan and a second by Commissioner Lysak. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And any opposed? Okay, not hearing any, the motion passes. Fantastic. Congratulations, Paul, and your team for once again successfully completing the process. At this point, we'll move on to the next item, which is our public comment section. Public comment time is set aside for persons wishing to address the board on items on the consent agenda and matters not on the agenda. Additional public comment will be invited on agenda items that are not presented. Do we have any persons who would like to comment? Okay, not hearing any, then we'll move on to our consent agenda, where consent agenda items are considered to be routine and may be enacted in one motion without separate discussion. Any board member may request that an item be removed by motion for separate discussion and action. Any items requested to be removed from the consent agenda for separate discussion will be considered immediately after the board has approved those items which do not require discussion. This evening, as you can see on the slide in front of you, we're here to approve the May 17th, 2023 regular meeting minutes, the June 6th and the May 31st work session meeting minutes and budget committee meeting minutes, and then to authorize the board president to sign the certificate of election results for the May 16th, 2023 special district elections. Do I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented?
This is Commissioner Duggan, so moved.
Commissioner Fisher, I second.
Great. Commissioner Duggan and Commissioner Fisher, motion and second. Can I have our district recorder please provide the roll call vote?
Commissioner Doan,
Yes.
Commissioner Duggan,
Yes.
Commissioner Fisher,
Yes.
Commissioner Lysick,
Yes.
and Commissioner Sanders.
Yes. Fantastic. The motion passes, and we'll move on to the last item on our agenda this evening, the business agenda, which is the financial plan and rate process update from, once again, our CFO, Paul Matthews. Paul, take her away, sir.
All right, thank you, President, Senators, Commissioners, and thank you for moving forward on the budget process. The next part of that is to set about updating the financial plan. You might remember that back in March, you adopted a financial strategy that we use as the basis of preparing the budget as well as preparing our official statement for our bond issue, which we closed in May. As a result, we have actual pricing from that bond issue, so we're able to go back through and update the financial plan as well as make our final adjustments to the budget process. So the next step would be to present that to the board for its approval, as well as the rate process. Now, normally we'd bring you the finance plan in May, but because we're in the middle of the bond issue, we decided to defer that until July. Normally we'd present this to you in a work session, but we're going to present some of the details to you here tonight to get some guidance so that we can work on this in the coming weeks and present the financial plan to you as well as the rate process in July. So real quick overview of the presentation. I'm going to talk about the financial plan update, and then we'll talk about the rate process update itself. So we have talked about the concerns that management has had, and again, these things are going to be fairly consistent as well. We are in the middle of a major construction project. We're in the middle of an inflationary environment. We have uncertainty abroad. We have changes in the value of the dollar. We have interest rates and inflation that seem to be bothering all of us. And so those issues remain risks that we have. I did have at one point, the last time you saw this slide under the risks, I had that we had significant construction risk remains. I've downgraded that from significant to some, not based on any good advice, but in a sense, we have a lot of contracts in place. But the size of those contracts are very significant. So one could quibble with me and saying, even though you don't have a lot of construction risk on the projects themselves, just the enormity of it means you have significant construction risk. I don't know, maybe Dave Kraska could share his opinion on that, but we do have to look at that as we go out in the future, notwithstanding the fact that we do have contracts in place, there still is some construction risk. So our recommendations remain the same, what we talked about back in March. Continue to build financial capacity because we know that we're going to have to borrow money to fund these things. Continue to manage our expenditures very carefully. Adopt rates that provide our financial resources in advance of our need, so we can demonstrate that good financial management to the bond market and to our rating agencies. Implement the new customer assistance program and continue to pursue federal and state assistance. So that's a long-term project that we're looking at there as well. So here's a quick update on our financial plan. The district's process remains the same. We've changed the dates a little bit to accommodate our bond issue, but we did bring you the strategic initiatives and the financial strategies, which you approved those in March. We then did develop the budget, which you just adopted, and now we're in the process of updating the financial plan. That will then form the basis for the rate process itself, the rates that we are going to propose. So tonight I'm going to give you a quick update on the financial plan and then ask you about the rate process as we go forward. Our baseline assumptions for the financial strategy, they remain largely unchanged. We are facing some significant headwinds. First year rate increase from the city of Portland of 26.1%. That certainly wasn't something that we were necessarily expecting. That has to do with our contract with Portland and the interaction of interest rates, as well as the completion of their corrosion control project. A lot of other things go into that formula. However, it was a rather large increase in our purchase water costs. At the JWC, we are seeing increases largely driven by chemical, power, and personnel costs. Our existing staff cost over the entire biennium, we expect that to be going up as well. And then the project cost increase, as well as the cost of integration planning that we have for the water supply system and our power costs. These are the assumptions that we have that are in our financial strategies. We have some new costs that were introduced since we presented you the financial strategy back in March. We have updated information on the EMI project. We have some staffing changes that we made during the budget process, as well as the customer assistance program, the full funding of that we've introduced since March. Having said that, we balanced all these expenditures within the budget framework to maintain consistency with the financial strategy that you approved back in March. So we made some adjustments internally to keep it in the same economic condition. So the process for our financial strategies, we presented the 3 financial strategies to the board. You gave us financial strategy 2A in March. We completed the budget. We completed the bond sale that I talked about. We've now recalibrated the financial plan, or continued to recalibrate the financial forecast, which is the model that we use to develop the financial forecast, to develop the financial plan, excuse me. And we did that considering the actual cost we have in the borrowing now that that is behind us, as well as the approved budget. Happy to say the interest rate that we received on our borrowing is less than what we had in the financial strategy. So that provides us a little bit of a buffer as we go forward. So we want to present the financial plan to the board in its July meeting for its approval. And so we want to get some guidance here tonight on that to make sure we have that approval process in place. So we have 3 rate strategies that we love strategy. We have financial strategies. Now we're going to talk to you about a rate strategy. We have 3 rate strategies that we can pursue. The first one implements the rate adjustments that were in the financial strategy that you approved back in March. Essentially is the same approach. The second rate strategy essentially keeps the first year rate increase at that 22%, but lowers the second rate increase in the out year. Essentially, strategies 1 and 2 can be the same. You can tell us to go forward with either of those 2 strategies and change your mind for the second year of the biennium, just like we had to do last year. We can actually reconsider that. The third strategy, however, puts us on a different trajectory. What that does is it lowers the rate increases for the first year and the second year and makes them consistent between the 2 years. If we do that, then we've made a commitment and we'll move forward. So let me present what the numbers look like for your consideration here. Excuse me. After these adjustments that we've made to our assumptions on the borrowing cost and everything else based on the actual issues, strategy 1 would continue at the 22% and the 17.5% that you approved back in March. Strategy 2 would consider having that second year rate increase as low as 9%. Option 3 would be to have the rate increases 17.5% for the first 2 years, and then the third year 6.5%, and then 3.5% thereafter. So those are the 3 rate strategies that you can consider. The impact on the typical monthly bill is presented in the second half of the table. A couple things to keep in mind. If you look at 2028, you see these differences in bills. Keep in mind that over time, they're all going to converge. They are going to converge essentially. This has more to do with the timing of things than the absolute amount. So we will converge over time. But those are the 3 strategies that we have. If you were to adopt strategy 2, and we found that the 9% wasn't sufficient, then we could come back and we may end up with essentially strategy 1 if we needed 17.5% rate increase. Or on the other hand, if we went with strategy 1 and we get to next year and we realize that we've had some savings, you could roll back that rate increase from 17.5 down to maybe even 9%. Bottom line is we're at the very end of this financing process. The chances that we're going to hit that second year number on target is quite remote. So I think we need to be prepared that we will be coming back with maybe an opportunity for you to make a different decision in the future. It's just we're at the tail end of this funding and we don't have as much flexibility as we did 5 years ago. The important numbers, I seem to be locked up. There we go. The important numbers that we're looking at as we judge these is our net leverage calculation, which is admittedly somewhat of a finance-centric way of looking at the world, but it's an important one. In this case, a higher number is bad, a lower number is good. And this is essentially how leveraged the district is. Our policy is that we don't want to have more than 2 years above 7, a leverage ratio of 7, and we don't want to have more than 1 year above an 8. So all 3 of these strategies bring us in within that policy. The reason that it's important to us is that we've targeted a AA+ credit rating for the district. That's where we think our sweet spot is for borrowing right now. And this, all indications working with our financial advisors as well as the conversations we have with the rating agencies seems to be the sweet spot. So we're feeling confident that all 3 of these strategies provide the district a way forward to maintaining that. Obviously, the strategies bring the numbers down faster, provide us a little bit more comfort, but I think we're convinced that we can live with all 3 of those strategies. So with that, here are some considerations that I would like to put out there as you discuss this and provide us guidance. First is that rate strategies 1 and 2 can be altered in the next year as forecast information gives way to actual results. We are going to know more in the coming 6 to 8 to 9 months than we do now. And that information will be available to us in March, April of next year to come up with, if needed, another strategy. Rate strategy 3 may increase the risk of higher rate increases in the future. As I indicated, if we do strategy 1 or 2, we're at that 22% increase. That presents a little bit lower risk. If we start off at 17.5%, it is greater probability that we will be coming back with something greater than 17.5% next year. And then, as I mentioned earlier, in the long term, each of these rate scenarios, rate strategies, have a similar impact on customers. It's more about the timing of these impacts as opposed to the ultimate impact on our customers. So with that, open up for discussion guidance. If you have that, if you're not prepared to give us guidance, we can bring more information back at the July meeting. But if you have a preference, we'd like to get that guidance from you tonight so we can prepare that financial plan with one of these strategies and have that for you in July for your approval. So that'll open up questions and discussion.
Commissioner Lysick.
Thank you, Paul, for this information. I'm inclined to sort of like embrace my risk aversion. And we had a very robust discussion that led us to the conclusion for what is that rate strategy 1. It's spectacular to get to see that there is some flexibility. That's really what rate strategy 2 is highlighting, that we're not as constrained given updates to assumptions and the bond sale essentially, but the prospect of saying that we'll go to 9% and then having to come back into the teens gives me just a little bit of heartburn It's always nicer to have a buffer that while we don't know where it's going to be used now, something always comes up. So even if even if we had a crystal ball and could look 12 months from now and say we know with certainty we're going to end up with an 11% rate increase, it feels so much better to start out with 17.5 and go to 11 than get all of our minds locked into a 9% rate increase and have to bump it up to 11.
Yeah, very valid point. I'm coming from a very similar risk aversion perspective myself. So we wanted to present 3 options to you, but you kind of landed on the one that you can imagine I'm most secure with.
Yeah, and I share the opinion that's spoken so far. Rate strategy 1 to me is I think the appropriate strategy in my opinion, because if we can come back next year and only increase rates even 14%, that makes people feel a lot better than saying, oh, we were going to do 9 and now we're going to do 14, for all the reasons that Commissioner Lysick used a far more professional way of saying it. But I share that opinion.
The other thing to keep in mind is that rate strategy 2 does have a 6% increase in 2026. And depending on what happens with inflation between now and then, that 6% may be an inflationary increase, which would then mean that we would have even a higher increase in that 3rd year. So we still have a lot of uncertainty in front of us.
Any other thoughts, Commissioner Doan, Duggan, Fisher?
None here.
Okay, with that, would you, I don't know if we can nod heads or however we do this, provide guidance to pursue strategy 1 and develop the financial plan around strategy 1? Is that what I'm hearing from the board? Okay, so we will do that. We'll present that for your approval. You will have total discretion to accept it or not when we bring it. Obviously, it'll be a separate action, a formal action, but we'll put our efforts around developing a strategy, a financial plan that is based on rate strategy number 1. President Sanders, am I clear to go on to the next part of my presentation?
You are indeed. I believe that option 1 is the preferred option by the board.
Okay, so now I'll get into the rate process. And frankly, the rate process that we're proposing here is very similar to the rate process that we've had in the past. I think we've found an effective way of doing that. And frankly, I think that we would continue to pursue that. So the couple of requirements that we have, first of all, there are some legal requirements that we have to adjust water rates. As a special district, we're required to provide a postcard to our customers that lets them know we're having a public hearing when we're adjusting rates. Having said that, the legal requirement is that the postcard be delivered to customers no more than 30 days before the meeting. Working with our communication experts, what we understand is that actually there's a better time to send that so that we can provide information about the open houses that we would like customers to attend. So there's a timing issue. We don't want to send the postcard out too early. We don't want to send it out too late. We want to send it at a time that optimizes for our customers the ability to participate in that process through the open house process. The public hearing, we have that tentatively scheduled. We recommend that that be in August. It's the best practice beyond these legal requirements are to have the open houses to inform customers about the basis for our rate increase. And I think that the commissioners that have attended that, we've had customers come in who are, I think it's fair to say, irritated by these rate increases. And after they hear about the projects that we're doing, they hear from Tom and Dave and myself, they walk away saying, I don't like it, but I understand why we're doing it, and even appreciate it at times. There are some customers that just aren't going to like it. We understand that this is a big ask for everybody, but we found the open house to be a very effective way at communicating with customers, provide them the information they need. Also at the open houses, we're able to get feedback from those customers, provide it to the board to be included in the public record. So we like to have an approach that lets the customers give us very specific feedback that can be included in the public record. So with those assumptions and ideas, here's our tentative proposed rate process. First is that we would have open houses. We would have them, I say here on a Wednesday, but we'd have them early in August before the meeting on the 16th. We would have one at noon, noon to 1:30, 6 to 7:30 p.m. so we can get people who are available during the day, and those that aren't available during the day would have an opportunity to participate. We'd do those in a probably in a talking water format so that people can participate without the need to actually come to the district. We did that during the COVID pandemic. We found that to be pretty effective. Then on the 16th, during your regular meeting, we'd have a public hearing where you'd receive comment. The open house, we'd have one additional open house after the initial public hearing. The goal there is if we have customers who show up at the public hearing and aren't satisfied, we can have them come to the open house to get their concerns addressed. Also, we would receive public comment during that open house. And in fact, we would keep the public comment period open through the 24th of August. So people could go to our website and leave public comment. We want them to provide the public comment. We don't want to characterize it. We want them to provide the comments, and then we go into the public record. Now, the board, you can put whatever in the record that you choose to. We provide all the information we may gather off social media. If you want to put that in the public record, that would be your prerogative, but we wouldn't necessarily do that. We would have these formal channels of gathering information from our customers and putting the public record. And then the September 20th regular meeting, you would then take action to adopt a resolution that would set the rates with an effective date of November 1 of 2023. So the process here would be open house, virtual with the talking water format before the meeting, August 16th regular meeting, have a public hearing, and then at the open house after that would be in person on a Saturday here at the district's office for people that prefer to come in and meet without having the electronic interface. This is the process we've used with slight tweaks during the pandemic, and it's proven quite effective. Now, if we're going to do a process like this, what we would want to do is to bring a resolution to the board at your July meeting that would direct staff to undertake this process. And the reason we want direction from you on that is we need to send that postcard that I described. And we don't want to send the postcard unless the board tells us that we should be holding a public hearing. That again is your prerogative to hold a public hearing and notify customers as such as required by the law. And the open houses. We want direction from you all to have the open houses and public comment. So when you accept public comment, that again is the board prerogative. Obviously at a public hearing, you're going to receive public comment, but if you want to hold the public comment period open and you want to start it before, we feel that it's best if the board directs staff to do that rather than staff just coming up with the process on their own. So given that, if this process feels right to you, we would come back in July, like we've done in past years, with this process and a resolution directing staff to undertake this kind of a process. So with that, move back if there are any discussions or guidance that you'd like to provide us as we prepare for this July meeting.
Paul, this is Todd Sanders. Is there anything formal the board has to do, like be in attendance or anything of that nature to receive public comment, or public comment can come in the form of written words on a note card dropped in a box?
So I will do two things. One, I'll give Clark a warning. I'm going to ask him to answer the question because he's our expert on this matter. And then I'm going to pretend I know what I'm saying, which is, I think that's up to the board. But Clark, what's the real answer?
Man, that's cold.
Just a second. Here I go.
That's cold. Clark sitting on the bench and then called in to pitch.
I didn't even get a warm-up swing, but
Yeah.
that's okay. Okay. So if I understood the question, it was whether or not a card is a public record. I mean, somebody help me with the question again.
Yeah, the question is, according if Paul goes back a slide, there were several dates where public comment could be received. And
Right.
the question is, does public comment have to be received in a formal setting, i.e. with the board managing, or can
No.
it be in the form of an email or a note card or anything of that nature?
No, it's anything. It's any communication that we receive. Because if it comes as an email, postcard, some kind of communication that's reduced um, to some recordable form, right? Which they are. That is a public record. That is part of your record upon which you're basing your decision. So it's all acceptable to receive comment in that way, and it's our obligation then to maintain that in a way that's accessible to the public on a public records request.
Righto. All right. Thank you, Kirk Gibson.
President Sanders, one thing I may want to add here is that our intent will be to use our website as a method so people can go to the website and through the magic of that process, be able to submit a comment that then would be included in the record as well.
Yeah. Great. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Clark. And Clark, thank you for getting my Kirk Gibson reference. I appreciate that.
Okay, if there's no other discussion or guidance, we will come to the July meeting with a proposed rate process and a resolution to adopt something very similar to what you saw here. We'll work with our communications teams to get actual dates in here. We need to look at calendars. We need to have certain people available. For example, our CEO, and really like to have our water supply program director there as well. So we'll come back with actual dates at the July meeting, but it will follow this general format. That concludes my part of the presentation, President Sanders.
Great, thank you. Any last comments from any of our board members this evening? All right, I think that is our last agenda item this evening because there's the slide that everybody likes to see at the end of the day. This is our adjournment slide. So with that then, I will close our meeting and we will now probably end our transcription and recording. And just as a reminder to everyone, no work session at the beginning of July. If you remember, we all agreed that we would not be attending a work session. I believe it was scheduled for some kind of federal holiday. I can't remember which one what's called in July. Ha ha ha. So no work session. So we will only see each other later in the month of July for the monthly board meeting. And it sounds like that again will be a very full agenda. We'll have a number of items to go over on that day. It won't be a quick meeting at all. All right. And with that, then, happy 4th of July to everybody. Juneteenth is over. Happy Father's Day is over. Whatever holidays are coming up, enjoy them all. Enjoy your family. Enjoy the summer. Enjoy Oregon. Boy, it's nice here. You kind of really forget how crappy January is when you get into June and July and you think, man, Oregon's a great place to live. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a nice evening, and we'll see you all in July.
Good night, all.
Thanks all.
Thanks. Good night.
Take care.